Hey everybody, before today's video begins, I'd like to thank DraftBuff for sponsoring this video. If you missed out on the promotion done in my Spark video, here's a quick explanation of what it is. So DraftBuff is an online fantasy platform for esports. DraftBuff gives you the opportunity to build and draft your own team, which can earn you points every single week in the hopes of taking down the competition. DraftBuff has leagues for Overwatch, League of Legends, CSGO, Call of Duty, and Rainbow Six Siege. Just like last year, DraftBuff and I have teamed up to create my own season-long Draft Royale League, which you can join through the link in the description. It's completely free to join. For those of you who are new to the platform, Draft Royales are a weekly game mode where you select 6 players in one team who you believe will earn you a lot of points. What I like about this game mode is that you get to field a different roster every single week. You don't have to feel locked in, but there is a catch. Every player costs a certain amount of points, and there is a budget you cannot exceed. Choose your team wisely because some players and teams will cost more than others. Here's a look at the roster I'm going to be rolling with in opening week. At DPS, I decided to go with Kevster and Hisu. They're both pretty cheap, but also possess high upside, making them decent value picks in my opinion. At tank, I'm rolling with Tuyu and Gaga. Tuyu's going to have a lot of good value for the current meta, and Gaga will be pretty good for his low pricing considering he has a lot of opportunities to earn big points in his rookie debut against the Valiant. With my supports, Iris was cheap and seriously might be able to put up big healing numbers in what should be a tough week for the Atlanta Reign. Gangnam Jin, on the other hand, will be my big money pick of the week. Gangnam Jin has been historically dominant in fantasy, and the Mayhem's week 1 schedule is looking quite favorable, which could mean massive point potential. And finally, I'm picking the Toronto Defiant as my team of the week due to their decent price and 2 very winnable games on paper. So, think you have what it takes to be a better predictor than me and the community? Prove to the world you know exactly who's going to pop off on a weekly basis in my Draft Royale League. Oh, and one other quick thing. I'm also running a contest over on my Twitter where 8 lucky winners will have a chance to join my exclusive traditional fantasy league where we draft teams and stick with them the entire year. All you gotta do is comment your DraftBuff username under my Twitter post and you'll get DM'd if you are one of the winners. But don't feel bad if you don't win, because like I said, everybody has a chance to play with myself and the rest of the community through the Draft Royale. Join soon because lineups for Week 1 lock on Friday, April 16th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to check out the links in the description if you're interested in DraftBuff, my Draft Royale League, and my Twitter contest. Thanks again to DraftBuff for sponsoring this video, and now on to your regularly scheduled programming. We're getting very close to the day we've all been waiting for. Overwatch League Season 4 is just around the corner. To further help build upon the hype, we're going to be talking about some pre-season predictions. I skipped out on this personally last year in favor of the community because I simply did not have time to do both. But now I'm ready to jump back in because I have a bit more free time. So what I'm going to be doing is giving you answers to a handful of questions I'm asking myself before the season starts. The predictions I'm going to be making are in the form of the winners of the Eastern and Western Conferences, the Final Four of this year's playoffs, the Grand Finals champion, the regular season MVP, Rookie of the Year, the Most Improved Player, the Most Improved Team, the biggest surprise of the year, and the newly added Coach of the Year, which I'm doing for the first time this year. Oh, and guess what? Just like last year, I'm going to be making a separate community prediction video where I purely get input from you guys about the exact same questions I just talked about. If you want to participate, make sure to answer through the survey you can find in the link in the description. I'm going to be highlighting some of the results within the next week or two, so stay tuned. In the meantime, here's my own personal predictions. Let us begin with the winners of the East and Western Conferences. Sadly, I don't have any hot takes here. I have the Dragons winning the East and the Shock winning the West. I'm going to play it safe here. These are the 2 teams who stand out the most in their respective conferences for me. The Dragons have a very stacked roster going for themselves. Besides a slight downgrade at main tank potentially, the team appears to be stronger than ever. They have one of the deepest rotations in the league. The tanks are versatile, the DPS have certain things they're all going to specialize in and be effective on, and their supports are equipped to play just about any combination at the highest level. They're well-rounded and full of superstar talent, and let's not forget about their top-tier coaching either. If this team doesn't pick up where they left off, then I'm going to be completely caught off guard. They feel stronger than any other roster in Asia to me. As for the Shock, well, it's more of the same essentially. I understand that the Shock have yet to come in first place in their division before, but they are the strongest on paper still. There's that, and the fact that they're coming off back-to-back championships. That helps a lot too. Breaking down their roster, they boast the strongest support lineup in the league, let's call it how it is. Someone of Twilight's caliber probably coming off the bench is absolutely horrifying. At tank, you got Super, Smurf, and Choi who give you a lot of coverage and of course a lot of consistency. And don't be sleeping on the DPS. They're still very dangerous. Ant and Rascal may be gone, but Striker is definitely still there to lead the way and hold down the fort, and Glister has a lot of promise himself. Just imagine what he can do now that he has access to better resources and teammates for that matter. He was already a lethal sniper in 2020, and knowing the Shock, he's probably going to take that next step towards becoming a superstar player. As for the flex DPS situation, I think that both Nero and Tayo could also make valuable contributions, although I expect that Striker and Glister will be the main stars of the show. These are the two teams I have the least number of questions about. They're two of the best possible teams to predict. They should consistently have a leg up over a fair amount of their competition. Now let's talk about the final four of the playoffs. It's very hard to tell given how many solid teams there are this year, but I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say it will be the Shock, Dragons, Justice, and Mayhem. Given my predictions on the previous question, I think the Shock and the Dragons were pretty obvious, and I already made it clear why I think they're going to be successful this year. So let's talk about the other two. So the Justice, in my opinion, have what it takes to make a very deep playoff run. They feel incredibly dangerous. When the playoffs come around, I get the feeling that guys like Decay, their new rookie Mag, and Fury are going to come alive. They have all shown they can be clutch performers when it truly matters throughout their careers. This team has high expectations and they're hungry to prove themselves. So long as everybody does their job, they're going to go very far. But of course, as I've already mentioned before here on this channel, the one worry I definitely still have is with the support line because both Closer and Bebe on paper are not all that appealing, but something tells me they'll probably do enough. If the Justice could go on a sick playoff run with Arc and Aim God, I see no reason at all why they couldn't do the same with Closer and Bebe. It's not like the formula is going to change. Invest in Decay and the tanks and watch them go to work. I'm also just a massive fan of their coaching because I think their strategy and general understanding of the game is greater than most. Then there's Florida, which is easily the spiciest prediction I have on here, and I have no confidence in this guess whatsoever. This is literally all it is, it's just a guess. I don't really have any absolute evidence to say that they're going to make it over a bunch of other teams in the league. This is just me and some sort of random gut feeling I have that probably won't come true. Because I'll be honest, putting them over the likes of Philly, the Gladiators, or even Dallas could definitely raise some question marks for some. But honestly, I really do think in a way Florida could be that good despite this just being a pure guess, because they are very capable. Despite my potential worries about OG and the team being unable to adapt in the clutch, I have a lot of faith that they can break their limits eventually. If they're willing to give OG a chance, maybe I should too. I'm hoping they can learn from their mistakes and show some improvement as a roster. They're a very talented and motivated group with some very sick coaching. My bold, but way too early prediction is that they get hot at the right time. Maybe the meta gets in their favor. Maybe an upset or two happens along the way as well. I trust in the Mayhem to make at least a few strides this year. I really don't think they have it in them to make it to the grand finals or anything crazy like that, but this is still a great step in the right direction. It'll mark a year of improvement that shows they should be around for years to come. Next up is who will win the Season 4 Grand Finals. I'm sorry to say it, but I once again see the Shock pulling off the three-peat. As much as I want to see somebody else win it, this just feels like it's destined to happen. I pray to the Overwatch gods I'm wrong here, but it does not look good because their chances seem pretty high to me. They have all of the necessary tools to pull this off. They have the star power, the deep roster, the potential, the championship experience, and the coaching. Do I think they're an absolute lock to win it all? Of course not. There's some very scary teams with massive potential out there. I could totally see the Dragons or maybe one of the other top NA teams pulling it off. Getting hot at the right time is something this league has seen in all 3 years of the playoffs. London pulled it off in the inaugural season. The Shock did it in Season 2 after their loss to Atlanta. And while they didn't win the title, the Dynasty still made it to the Grand Finals. Sometimes we have teams simply come out of nowhere. With unknown factors aside though, if we're going off clear-cut favorites, the Shock are one of the top options. Now on to the regular season MVP. What I really want to do is go with a tank like Void or some other promising player, but it feels unrealistic to see them win this particular award. We've seen 2 damage dealers and 1 support win the award overall. And sure, Sinatra won because of his Zarya and everything, but that was only because Goats was a must-pick composition for about 50% of the year, if not more. Regardless of who deserves it the most, the flashy players are the ones who usually win, I feel like. So with that in mind, I predict that Decay takes home MVP. Unless something terribly wrong occurs, this feels like his year to take the league by storm. When he actually played last year, he hard carried on the regular. Now imagine him playing that well, or maybe even better, but for the entire season plus potential tournaments. And his performances will probably feel even more meaningful considering that it's way more likely to come in a winning effort because of the team around him. Forget about the number 1 DPS player. He seriously might end up being the best player, period. I'm expecting the Justice to win a lot of games, largely because of his ability to perform in the clutch. He's got a Tracer, he's got a Widow, a McCree, all of the hit skins of your dreams, and the general flexibility. The hype surrounding this guy could be greater than it's ever been before. Engaging from previous years, the MVP award tends to be largely based on things like popularity and hype. Decay could be a prime candidate if previous years tell us anything at all. Moving on to Rookie of the Year, this award does not feel so clear-cut. Last year, it kind of felt like a lot of people already saw Alarm winning the award coming because he's an absolute monster. This time around, though, the race could be a bit tighter. There's a lot of pretty viable picks out there, but the guy I plan to go with is none other than Mag. I know it may feel annoying for some of you to see the Justice be a part of so many categories, but to me, it really does feel like their year. In my opinion, Mag is the most pro-ready player from this rookie class. He's already incredibly proven in high-pressure scenarios, and thanks to all of that gameplay we have of him on Runaway, we know that he possesses a rather diverse hero pool. In my opinion, he's definitely not perfect. I think there could be some metas where he's maybe a bit less effective than he could be, but generally speaking, he likely does have what it takes to keep pace with even the top main tanks in the game. I have a ton of confidence in this dude. The pros regard him highly already, the analysts all think he's great, he's got a top-tier coaching staff, and he'll have one of the best tank partners in the world. The only things that could really stop him at this point are himself, well duh, obviously, and mediocre support play. I would argue he's receiving the most hype for a rookie main tank since Gushue. There's a lot of pressure on him to perform, but if there's a young player who has shown he can come up big when he needs to, it's Mag. Before moving forward, a few honorable mentions go out to Gaga, Pelican, League, and Guangboon. If Mag is not the one to win this award, I suspect that one of those four have a strong chance of taking it home instead. Question 6. Who will be the most improved player? What's important to note about this particular question is that I'm strictly talking about the improvement of a player from Season 3 to Season 4. If they were not in the league in 2020, they're not eligible. For example, that means I don't really count Yakpung, even though it would be really cool to see a redemption story and all. When it comes to last year's players, there's a few guys I could see showing a serious level up, kind of like what BQB showcased. The obvious one is probably Glister. He was really good on London, but he could end up becoming an absolute monster under the San Francisco system, or maybe a veteran like Erster could be the winner. He was poorly utilized on Atlanta during Season 3 and has a chance to look a lot more like his old self now that he's playing on Shanghai. But the player I actually decided to go with is Leave. If we're being honest, his impact was not out of this world during Season 3. I wouldn't say he was awful, but he kind of played below expectations up until Chengdu's resurgence towards the end of the year. Once the team around him started to play better, he really started popping off. Now that the Hunters have made a lot of improvements to the roster, he might be able to turn into a dominant superstar that many people envisioned him to become right from day one. Leaf had Rookie of the Year levels of expectations last year. I'm very much banking on a redemption story where he consistently plays the way many of us expected him to back in his rookie year. Leaf is such a talented individual. The fact that he can be effective as a hit scan and projectile is truly amazing. His flexibility and diverse hero pool could make him a great option for the Hunters no matter what the meta calls for. With some newly added star power and RUI back in control, Leaf possesses the tools necessary to output a solid comeback year. Alright, but what about the most improved team? Well, there's quite a few options out there, but it really will depend on the final outlook of the standings. I think a team like Boston, for example, could be in a good position to win this award depending on how they play. If they could go from like 20th place to almost top half of the league or even top 10, that would be a pretty noticeable improvement, and I would maybe give them the award. With how stacked the Gladiators are on paper, they could probably win it too. To go from mediocre to a potential title contender would be a really big jump. But once again, I find myself going with none other than the Washington Justice. I know, really boring stuff, but I can't help myself here. They finished in 19th place last year, and now they're being regarded as a top 8 or better team in most people's eyes. That type of jump would be absolutely insane if it ends up happening. If they play up to their potential, they are frontrunners for this award 100%. Say what you will about them making a playoff push at the end of last year, but when you analyze their season as a whole, they were terrible for like 90 90+% of it, plus they wouldn't have made the playoffs to begin with if COVID did not strike. They're giving me heavy 2020 Florida Mayhem vibes right now. Those guys finished the year on a good note in Stage 4 of 2019 with a 4-3 record, then made some good strides during the offseason. The Justice are practically in the same position here. What's more is that they have a chance to make even greater improvements thanks to the promise of their tank line and DPS line. The Justice feel like a no-brainer to me given how dangerous they feel. Now for the question with the most possible creativity. What or who will be the biggest surprise of the season? What I love about this question is that it could be something positive or negative. There's really no limit here. My imagination though, well, it's not extremely wild. I'm going to keep mine pretty basic. My biggest surprise of Season 4 belongs to the Boston Uprising, and I mean it in a good way. I genuinely do believe that some, not all, but some people are hard sleeping on them. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be pushing for a top spot in the standings, but they could end up being a real challenge for a lot of their opponents in North America. They aren't expected to go places this year, and that's what makes them scary. They could put a lot of pressure on the teams that are expected to beat them, which could lead to quite a few upsets along the way. They are not getting enough credit because there is so much latent potential within this group. People like I'm 37, Valentine, Myungbong, and Faith could make for an absolutely nutty core. And don't forget their young off-tank prospect Gabe Bolsey on their academy team who could get promoted at any given moment. And they're all under the care of Lori, who could be one of the best coaches in the league right from day one. Boston seriously might sneak up on the general fan base, which definitely does outnumber those of the hardcore status. Now for the final question of this video. Who wins Coach of the Year? I figured I might as well add this one into the mix if the league gave it out last year. This one can be tough because there is a wealth of amazing coaches out there. But the thing is, I feel like this award likely just goes out to whoever reaches the top of the standings. If one team is clearly the most dominant during the regular season, their victory is practically guaranteed. However, I also feel that voting fatigue plays a factor in this. This could just be me, but I feel like the more well-established coaches that people always talk about are going to be less likely to win it. In other words, people are looking for fresh new faces to vote for. That's kind of what I've learned throughout my years of being a sports fan. It happens all the time. Last year, Coach Moon made sense because it was all about Krusty before then. Plus, the Dragons were insanely good. But now that the Dragons are dominant, that makes his likelihood of winning it go down as well. So you know what? I'm going to go with Kookie as my Coach of the Year. I firmly believe Florida is in for another successful campaign. He was definitely one of the runner-ups last year, and if they can maybe do a little bit better than last year, all while finding success with 2 new starters, that would be enough for me at least. Florida genuinely have a chance to be one of the top teams in North America, if not the entire league. If they can pull it off with 2 new starters and a minimal 7-man roster, that would be insanely impressive. This year could be quite challenging for the Mayhem. If they overcome it, Kookie is going to look like a genius. Some of the other potential Coach of the Year candidates outside of Moon and Krusty, in my opinion, are Rush, 9K, Supreme, Lori, KDG, Why Not of the NYXL, or maybe DPay if the Gladiators show improvement. I have doubts about DPay winning it, but you never know. This is going to be a really tight race. Expect the standings and tournament outcomes to play a major role in the decision-making process. And on that note, we're officially done with all of the questions. So, what do you think of my predictions? Are they too boring? A little too spicy for your liking? Did I put too much faith in the Justice? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you're new around here. And don't forget, please, do not forget, you can participate in the survey through the link in the description if you want to contribute to the community predictions video. Anyway, that's all I got for you. Until next time, guys, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.